Hello, and in this video I'm going to look at the part 2 topic, describe your grandparent's job. You should say what it was, how long he or she has had or had this job, how he or she got the job, and explain whether you would like to do this job. Now, hopefully the IELTS examiner will ask you before giving this topic if it is okay for you to talk about, because if your grandparents have died recently, then you would feel uncomfortable talking about this topic. If they don't say that and you do have a problem with talking about this topic because of a recent death, then tell the IELTS examiner and ask to change the topic. But I'll go through some useful vocabulary that you could use for this topic, and it's also useful for talking about jobs in general. So you might find some vocabulary in this video that's useful for talking about your own job in part 1. And then I'll look at some part 3 questions connected with this topic. To be perfectly honest, both sets of grandparents died when I was quite young, so I don't actually know a great deal about their jobs, other than what I have been told by my parents. My paternal grandfather was employed in an office, and I'm not entirely sure what he did, but I think he was in charge of looking after the staff. Nowadays it would be called human resources, but at that time it was something like payroll, so he was responsible for making sure everyone got paid. It was a desk job and a 9-to-5 job. From what I've heard, he wasn't particularly well paid, but he had job security, and it was basically a job for life. In those days, there were no perks like a company car or pension. He got paid in cash every week, as far as I know. I guess he was considered as the most important person in the organisation, because he made sure that everyone got their wages each week. Nowadays, everything is done by bank transfer, but back then he had to go to the bank and get the money in cash and count it out for each person and put it in an envelope with a wage slip. Like I said, I wasn't around when my grandpa was working, so I have absolutely no idea how he got the job. In those days, though, school leavers left school and found a job in their local area. There was no commuting like there is now. I imagine it was a company he was familiar with. Back then you didn't need to apply and have 3 interviews before getting the job. It was a much simpler process. I imagine that he started at the bottom and worked his way up, because he was diligent and reliable. Would I like to do this job? I don't think I'm cut out for this kind of job, because I'm not particularly good with numbers. It was probably a dead-end job as well, and I prefer a job with promotion prospects, because I am quite ambitious. I would certainly like the job security though, because not many professions have that in the current economic climate. So let's take a look at some of the language. So to be perfectly honest, make sure you use that at some point in the IELTS exam. We talk about grandparents in sets, like a pair of grandparents. So you have your paternal grandparents. These are the grandparents on your father's side, paternal. And then you have your maternal, with an M, maternal. And these are the grandparents on your mother's side. So my paternal grandfather is my father's father. And because I'm talking about this and I didn't really know him very well, I can use the passive, what I have been told by my parents. Another good use of the passage here, he was employed. I'm not entirely sure. Get used to saying this instead of saying I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. And when talking about jobs, you need to think about what the person was in charge of or responsible for. These are 2 very good phrases for talking about jobs. And the staff, there are lots of words to talk about workers, employees, staff, so you could use all of these. Human resources, this is the department in an organisation that looks after the staff. So they employ the staff, they speak to the staff if there are any problems, they do their salary. So they have a wide range of jobs in the human resources department. But in the past, all people really did was payroll, and this means organise the pay for each person. When talking about jobs, do you do a desk job? And that just means you sit at a desk. Is it a 9-to-5 job? Now, many jobs nowadays are not 9 to 5, but still, desk jobs we often describe as 9-to-5 jobs because they're not like being a police officer or a doctor or working in a hospital where you would work shifts and maybe work overnight. Desk jobs are usually done during the day, and that's what we mean by 9 to 5. Well paid, so getting a good salary. When we're talking about jobs, we talk about job security. How secure, how safe your job is. Is there a risk of losing your job? Well, in the past, there was much more job security than now, and you had a job for life. So that means when you started your job, you probably worked for them for the rest of your life. Perks, these are things you get like company cars, pension, gym membership. Paid in cash. Now in my country, the UK, this doesn't happen much now, that at the end of every week you were given a wage and it was cash, it was money. Now most people are paid a salary and they're paid monthly. Organisation, just another word for the company, the firm. Bank transfer, so we're not paid in cash, we're not paid in money anymore. Usually the company transfers the money to your bank. And in the past it was put in an envelope with a wage slip. So something, we still get these. This is a wage slip where it says how much you've earned, what tax you've paid, if you've paid any pension, things like that. So in IELTS Task 2, you're often going to be saying similar things to what you've already said before. So like I said, like I've already said, as previously mentioned, I wasn't around when my grandpa was working. Grandpa, another name for grandfather, granddad. Instead of saying I don't know, I have absolutely no idea. You can use that in part 3 when you don't know the answer to a question, but do try to develop it a little bit. School leavers, very useful for IELTS writing as well, to avoid the words people. Commuting, so travelling from your home to your place of work. He was familiar with, he knew. To be familiar with means to know. He started at the bottom and worked his way up. This is a very good complex language for talking about jobs. When you start at the bottom, you go in as the lowest paid job, so maybe an office assistant, and then to work your way up means to get promoted, to get a better job in the company. He was diligent and reliable. Diligent is a very good word for describing people. It means hard working, and reliable, dependable. So to go back to one of the bullet points, it's often useful just to ask the question, would I like to do this job? I don't think I'm cut out for. To be cut out for means to have the right qualities for a particular job. So for example, I love animals. I get upset if an animal is hurt. So I'm not cut out for being a vet. A dead-end job. This is a dead end on a road, and it's where the road stops and you cannot go any further. A dead end job is where you cannot progress any further. There is no chance of promotion because you've either reached the top or there is nowhere to go in the company. So we call it a dead end job. A job with promotion prospects. So this means to get a better job, to be promoted within the same company. If you are ambitious, you are always wanting to succeed and get a better job. Another word for this is driven. Job security, your job is safe, you're not going to lose your job. Professions, useful for this topic, another word for job. And very useful for writing and speaking, the current economic climate. And it means the economy as it is at the moment. So in the UK, the economy is not great. People are struggling. Jobs are not very well paid. We're not getting pay rises. And so it's quite a bad current economic climate. And you can use that in IELTS writing as well, in the current economic climate, blah, blah, blah. So let's take a look now at some part 3 questions connected with this topic. So they might ask you, is it easy to find well-paid jobs in your country? Absolutely not. Sadly, in the last few years, decades, there has been an economic downturn and salaries have frozen or reduced and there are fewer jobs available. And I think this is probably the case in most countries. So when you're answering the question, instead of just saying yes or no, absolutely or absolutely not. An economic downturn, useful for writing as well. Salaries have frozen. This means that nobody gets a pay increase, a pay rise. Salaries are kept at the same level, but the problem is the price of food and houses and cars, etc. has increased, so we're all poorer. Jobs in education and the police used to be well paid. However, nowadays, workers in those professions are struggling to get on the property ladder. So workers in those professions, people who work in those jobs, are struggling, are finding it very difficult. And we talk about buying a house, we say to get on the property ladder, to buy a house. And this is very true. I don't know if it's true in your countries, but teachers, the police, nurses, these are now not well-paid jobs in the UK. And many of my friends who work in these jobs cannot buy their own houses. They cannot get on the property ladder. They have to rent. Professional footballers are the best paid in my country and they only work a few hours a week. So is it easy to find well-paid jobs? Absolutely not. But if you're a professional footballer, then you are going to get paid a lot, like Paul Pogba, £300,000 a week. The average annual, that's yearly salary in the UK, is £27,000. Most people are earning much less than that, and that's a year. So it's very difficult to find a well-paid job, and I imagine it is the same in your country. Do you think robots will replace human workers in the future? In certain jobs, yes. In others, no. So there are two sides to this, and I like this kind of question because, yes, there are some jobs where robots will replace humans, but in others they won't. For instance, in factories, employees have already been substituted for robots, such as in car manufacturing. So here we have an example of a car manufacturing plant, and robots are being used to build cars already. So it's not just in the future, this is happening now. However, it is not feasible in all occupations. For example, doctors. I cannot imagine a robot doing this job. You need the human touch. It's not feasible, it's not possible, it's not doable. The human touch is a friendly or pleasant way of treating other people that makes them feel relaxed, and to be a good doctor, you need the human touch. Robots don't have the human touch. They could maybe diagnose illnesses if you gave a list of symptoms like a computer, but they cannot give you the human touch and sympathize and empathize with your illness. So absolutely not are they going to replace doctors. So yes and no for this question. A lot of vocabulary in this topic. Very useful vocabulary. A lot of it can be used in IELTS writing on topics of work and employment. And a lot of it can also be used when talking about your own job, so I'd recommend that you learn quite a bit of the vocabulary in this video. Thank you for watching.